Hey, thanks for checking out my video. I'm John Stark, MacMovieGuy.com. Click the subscribe button so that we can hang, we can chill, we can talk about whatever, you know, stuff, life, shenanigans. Anyway, these are my top audio described films. Top what do I want to say? The best audio description of the year? I think that's probably it. Um, it's not a top 10 list, though. I wanted to kind of include more than 10. I saw about 280 films that were released in 2023. So, yeah. For you people out there who are blind, because I assume this video attracted blind and visually impaired people, hi, I'm wearing glasses. I do have a beanie on because I'm really self-conscious about my hair sometimes, and when I'm not 100% sure if my hair is show ready, I just slap on a beanie. I don't know what I look like with it on, but yeah. Anyway, I've got a beard and I'm wearing a shirt. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's got Guardians of the Galaxy on it. If you can see the top of it at all, you would notice it's a Guardians of the Galaxy shirt. So, anyway, so let's talk about the best audio description of 2023. It's obviously this is like subjective. I have a lot of different thoughts about audio description than some other people do. Um, I've gotten in debates about what is great audio description. These are the films I thought that had above average, exceptional audio description, whatever, for various reasons. And I'll try to mention them. I was keeping a running list. Some of them I'm like, well, I had to put this on this list, but I did like it. So, and there we go. So, I made a decision to just say the title. I don't have enough information, and the problem is, I did ask this question on an audio description form. I was like, "How? What?" I didn't get enough feedback. I got like one, and while it was Joel Snyder, who's a badass, but giving me feedback on life. Um, I want to be able to recognize people in general across the board because yeah, somebody, the audio description is great because somebody wrote a great script. Somebody hired the perfect narrator who did the best job um, doing the description, and then there was a sound mixer. Somebody had to come in and quality check it to make sure that the thing actually works. And QC is so underrated in this. There have been times where I have listened to audio description tracks. I'm like, there's no quality check here. There can't be. No blind person would have passed this on. It can't possibly be quality checked. So all of these stages are really important. And as pointed out, some of these films do have multiple audio description tracks depending on. So I'll try to hint you how I saw it and where I watched it, and maybe you'll get a glimpse of in case this film does have them. Some of these films are so recently released. Why do they have multiple audio description tracks? Like honestly. Anyway, though, they do. Some films do. And that's just industry waste spending. Just don't do it. Just figure out how to make this shit travel. Anyway, all right, let's kick off the list. Number 20 is Air. Um, Best thing I can say that I remember is the attention to detail in terms of the period. Um, there are definitely a lot of things that are specific to the time period in which it's in. Plus, I remember a really great scene when um, Matt Damon's sitting there and he's watching the footage, the basketball footage of the various different characters. I thought that was handled really well. The timing of that. Anyway, Air, I just thought had really good audio description, and this is available on Prime Video with audio description. Moving up the list, number 19, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Well, for certain, for having to track that many Spider-Men. and to try to explain who they all are and what makes them different, where they came from. There's the moment where they kind of hop into the real world for a hot second, where Spot just is like, "What? Where am I?" I thought everything was handled really well here. This is a really great audio description track for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I got this digital VOD copy, which admittedly they were late adding audio description to, but I was able to get it off of the Apple Store with audio description. So it should still be there. I don't know why they would remove it. Anyway, I hope they didn't remove it, otherwise they're going to refund my money. Um, Number 18, Anatomy of a Fall. This is a tough one because I first of all, I love the film. It's a great film, and it's a really well made audio description track. The person who does it not only speaks really perfect English, where you're like, oh, this is the native English speaker. But the couple of things where they read off the French, I thought was just flawless. I was like, oh my god, that French is like not a stumble or anything. This person is can handle the couple little things they read up at the top where it's they read the fact that it's a selection from Cannes, from the film festival. Cannes. I don't know why I said it like James Caan. I was like having a really hard time there. It's Cannes Film Festival, and they do it in French. But there's also like really sort of meticulous. It's a little bit of a murder mystery, and like did they do it or did they not do it? So you have to pay really close attention to those things. Plus, there's a lot of translation. There's been a lot of focus on in the blind community in our community from Milo Machado Granger, who plays the young boy in this because he's blind and in actually playing a blind kid. And he's the only witness to the crime and how he is and how he is able to testify and all that kind of stuff. And as a child, he has a lot put on his shoulders. It's a great performance. There's a lot of translation here with the multiple languages spoken. Murder mystery stuff, everything. We totally needed this. It's an excellent audio description track. However, I know it's not available anywhere with audio description. I get screener copies, and I got a screener of Anatomy of a Fall. I didn't see this in theaters. I know some people who did, so it was available in theaters with audio description. It's currently not available anywhere. It's going to Hulu. Fingers crossed. I did talk to Neon, email them, and they did say that they were aware, and it was always their intention to have audio description follow the film to its home releases, and hopefully it'll be on something somewhere. But I do want to still acknowledge the fact that Anatomy of a Fall had an excellent audio description track. Moving up the list, number 17, Saltburn. Just almost for like what they had to describe. First of all, there's like the lush, uh, landscape of Saltburn. When you get to the actual house, the estate. First of all, we should all name our homes. I don't know why I don't know why other people get to do it. I want to name my home something like Saltburn. Like, where do you live? I live at Saltburn. Now, what's your address? Saltburn. Just why can't we just name our homes? Um, so yeah, it's there's the opulence behind it that's described really well, but also all of the random sort of salacious material that's in this that I thought was described really well. When, for example, our young Oliver is paying tribute to the recently deceased. I'll leave it at that. I thought that was well described, and he's also really good at cleaning bathtubs. So two scenes that are both very odd, and somebody had to write the audio description for those, and they did a really great job. I watched this on Prime, so congratulations to the audio description team for doing such a really good job with this. Anyway, moving up the list to number 16. Leave the World Behind. I know this film didn't critically get like a ton of praise. This film actually has a lot of audio description that's focused on the camera angle, which is like super cool. Like we get there's the description when it pulls through the keyhole. There's a description given when we are upstairs with the family and the camera pans down to the lower floor, like almost like we're seeing it like a dollhouse maybe, and you can see the family up top and then you see the family below. So, yeah, there's a lot of that, as well as the fact that this film also has this weird sort of sci-fi post-apocalyptic element to it, and there's some violence and stuff in it that has to be described. So, I did think this was good. I think there's a little bit of a debate that raged around this film and the fact that there's a character that runs up to his car and speaks Spanish, and that wasn't translated. But from the character's perspective, from Ethan Hawke's perspective, he doesn't know what she's saying. And so in that moment, perhaps we shouldn't also know what she's saying. Although, if you were bilingual, you would have known what she was saying. Like I kept hearing her saying rojo, which is red. So, in retrospect, after when I found out what happened, I was like, oh, yeah, well, I get it, but I didn't get the totality of what it was that she was saying. If there were no subtitles that were offered for the audience, then why should we get it? Why should we get a translation? Anyway, moving up the list, very very rarely do we ever get stuff that focuses on where the camera's coming from. So that's why Leave the World Behind makes my list. It's on Netflix. You can check it out or not. It's a very divisive film. So, but the audio description, I liked it. Number 15, They Clone Tyrone. Um, yeah, this is a film that has a lot of focus on sort of, it's a weird, like, sort of trapped in time thing where everybody has a very specific look. It also has sci fi elements and clones, um, and lots of things that would make a film really difficult to understand and follow if it wasn't described. People die, get shot, and then they're back. So yeah, there's a lot happening here, and I thought the audio description here was really well done. And this is another one that's at Netflix. So and this was a really underrated film last year. So give it a look. See, it's a good audio description track. Anyway, number 14. I forget the numbers that I'm on. Rustin. Um, I really enjoyed Rustin's audio description. I thought it did a good job of following the characters, following what was happening. Also, just blending in. It's a film with a lot of dialogue, and it has to come in and out, and you have to figure out who these characters are. And just balanced and everything. And I don't know. I thought it did a really nice job. Sort of understated audio description. There's nothing really obvious about it that necessarily screams, "Oh my God, Rustin has the best audio description of the year." But yeah, it really complements the film. It gives it exactly what it needs to do. And there are a lot of historical figures that have to be tracked here and represented well. And I think the people who did the audio description track to Rustin understood what it was that they were describing and approached it with that level of reverence that you have to with a biopic. So thank you. Moving up the list, number 13, Oppenheimer. I would have this higher, except for the fact that, let's be honest, it's also one that has a lot of dialogue, and the audio description track was hard to get in. It's there are some times where they're trying to jump in there, but when you get into those Senate hearings, it gets a little tough to get a word in audio description wise in some of those parts. But overall, I thought it did a really good job of describing as much as it could throughout the film, considering how almost high paced and frantic the film was. at certain times. Obviously, like the times where it had the most audio description were, the bomb test sequence. Uh, there's not a lot of dialogue when when Killian and Florence are together. So that scene was well described. Um, and just a couple things like that. Yeah, when the audio description needs to it, it absolutely takes full advantage of every moment that it can, and that's why Oppenheimer's on my list. So, moving up the list, number 12 is Evil Dead Rise. Yeah, there's just a lot of horror gore here that's really well described, even like right from the top of the film. Oh, have I been skipping Oppenheimer? I saw in theaters, and I've actually seen it on Peacock. So there's two places. Um, as Evil Dead Rise was on Max, so it's available on Max without a description. A lot of horror, a lot of really crazy gore. Lots of there's like a monster thing at the end that just is doesn't make any sense at all if you don't have audio description. Even trying to describe it was like, what? It's just like one of those things where you're like, it's one of those like horror creations where you're like, what? What did you just say? So yeah, this film gets weird and wacky and gory and um, I don't know. There's so many things here. It's just there's the whole scene where she's looking through the keyhole. That was described very well. This is exceptional audio description at its finest, especially for horror in this year. I didn't. Evil Dead Rise was not my favorite horror film title of the year, but it might have been my favorite audio description horror of the year. Anyway, moving up the list, number 11, Poor Things. Oh, I love this audio description too. Yeah, it's Poor Things has to track, everything. It's got so much stuff. It's the only reason why it's at like 11 is because I felt like it excelled in some things, but I almost feel like Poor Things is too much of a film. Like it can't quite get everything in there. Like the production that design is too much. There are these creatures always walking around that we have to learn, that we have to talk about, that are like half, they're like hybrid creatures. Um, Willem Dafoe's character is just has a ton of character design to him, to put it mildly. There's a lot of sex that has to be described. A lot of attention given to when you can see Emma Stone's breast or not. But there are also some really cool things. Like it mentions one time when they use a fisheye lens. It mentions the difference between black and white and color. There are things like that I get obsessed with. I know that a lot of people don't, but it's those things that will help you answer questions when other people are starting to talk about directors and they talk about choices. And they're like, oh my God, this director does a really good job because of this, this, and this. Directors have very specific stylistic choices, and Yorgos Lanthimos is using that uh, like strong visual style. And if we can get at least a little bit of that in here, then absolutely, positively, we need it. So yeah, Poor Things has a lot going on. It's really hard to describe. High level of difficulty. And I thought the audio description team here did a very good job of trying to hit everything that they possibly could. There's just a lot here. This could benefit from having like a pre-show for us of like this is what the world is like. Since it doesn't take place in necessarily the world as we know it, and has a lot of sort of outlandish things. Now we're moving up to number 10, The Zone of Interest. This is another one where it came in clutch on the describing, to, translating. I really love what they did at the end here. I got this, by the way, off of Voodoo. I know that seems really weird. But it was the only place that had the audio description track for Zone when it hit home video. So I've heard it. Um, and this one has a bunch of narrators to it because they use them to translate the voices. And what they did at the end was they said the name of the company, and then each narrator actually got to say their own voice, which I thought was just chef's kiss. You know what I'm saying? Like just perfect way to do that. Um, Everyone feels represented. Everyone is represented. You can hear someone's voice, and you can hear sort of like, oh, well, they did that character. Okay, so that's what they were doing, because you have to have somebody who's doing sort of like the primary narration throughout the film, tracking the movement of the characters, all the little things. There's a lot of little details here, just really sort of horrifying details that you'll find throughout the film. Um, the film also the audio description track also does a really good job of doing what I was just talking about, which is finding little things that the director chose to do stylistically, things that to maybe like a congenitally blind audience they wouldn't necessarily understand. But when you put those things in it, it allows and challenges us to be able to actually be cinephiles more than just passively watching films, but actually really get into the art and the craft of films. Jonathan Glazer uses night vision for a scene in the film, which is directly pointed out. It's pointed out when it goes into night vision, and it's pointed out when we leave night vision. So there's a scene in the film where he uses night vision. And so for those in the blind and visually impaired community who have seen that effect done before, we can imagine what that looks like. But for those who are congenitally blind, it still makes sort of this interesting question of, oh, we're using night vision here, you know? It makes sort of that interesting connection. Anyway, I just thought this was really well done audio description. It's a film that's unwatchable without it, unless you speak German. So only the German audiences would be able to even try to be able to follow this. So, yeah, that's it. Anyway, moving up the list, number 9.
Laura Post and Deluxe, The Marvels.
The Marvels. Yes. This is I watched this off of Disney Plus, and the reason why I love the Marvels is, first of all, the stuff that they do with the cat. I know that's not a cat, but the stuff that they do with the cats, hilarious, and really well described. The little sort of um, the sequence that they have. If you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. I thought that was really well done, but mainly it's here because of teleportation. The mechanic that they add to this film is that every time one of the Marvels uses their power, they get teleported into the position of one of the other Marvels. So they're constantly being shifted around because of course they're going to use their powers. But it's like in these combat sequences, I thought they did a really nice job of following that sort of flawlessly and making something that would be really hard to follow. First of all, action sequences without audio description are a pain in the ass to begin with. But this would have been even a deeper pain in the ass because even if you were kind of picking up on anything at all, suddenly they're just teleporting. So someone else is where someone else is. You know what I'm saying? So they're just constantly shifting these characters around. Um, so yeah, the Marvels definitely absolutely on my list for that. So moving up the list, number 8.
Golda.
Golda. What I loved about Golda is I don't think I've ever seen a singular film track cigarette smoking like Golda does, and to give it, um, I mean, almost like I'm sure the people like R.J. Reynolds were like, yes, we love this audio description track. This track is amazing. It tracks like every time she smokes, like you could do a drinking game with it. She's like, it tracks sort of like the smoke like wafting through the air. Um, but smoking was such a huge part of Golden My Hair from everything that I was able to find. And people I talked to, it's like, yeah, she always smoked. That was what she did. So the fact that this film doesn't have much to it. It's mostly, those behind closed doors conversations that happen. So it's a pretty easy to describe film. She does like go to the hospital for some treatments, but most of the stuff about the conflict you hear like over the radio. So there isn't a lot of heavy action to be had here. So the fact that it tracks the like literally every time she lights up a cigarette or stubs out a cigarette or where the smoke is headed or whatever, she takes a drag on the cigarette. It's just Considering there are so many other studios that would have said no, don't even mention it, you know, it's amazing to even hear it in a audio description track. Um, Listen, if the sighted audience gets to see it, we should be able to have access to it. Stop trying to censor audio description. It's ridiculous. So, anyway, I like Golda for weird reasons, but I wouldn't be so impressed if I didn't feel like this kind of stuff was being censored by other film studios. Anyway, I rented Golda VOD from the Apple Store. So moving up the list, number 7,
Laura Post, Guardians Dramatic
Guardians of
Playbook
the Galaxy
Part 2
Volume
Live.
3. Yeah, well, first of all, the action sequence with the Guardians going down the hallway was amazing. But there's a lot of stuff here that just is heavy visual effects. A lot of characters that are just completely CGI, like Groot, like Rocket, Rocket's pals. I'll just call them Rocket's pals for right now. There are the sort of like monster creatures that they find when they go into the facility that Rocket's being held at. Um, yeah, Crypto has an unusual amount of screen time in this. So, yeah, characters who need audio description just to simply even exist, or for us to even understand conceptually who they are, what they look like, all those kind of things. In addition to the fact it's an action film, it's a sci-fi film. There's a lot happening here. And when you have a character that's a lead, like Rocket Raccoon, essentially became the lead of this film, and he's completely CG, and all of his little facial expressions and everything. It's a merge of the voice talent of the actor, but it's also a credit to the audio describer for being able to really nail the narration to get the emotion in here. There's a lot of really heavy material here for the final outing for the Guardians, and I love this audio description track. So I watched this on Disney Plus. It has audio description on Disney Plus. Anyway, moving up the list, number 6,
Society of Dramatic
Society of
Poetic
the
Snow.
Snow. That's another one. It's a foreign language film that has audio description that translated the dialogue so we can understand what these people are actually saying to each other while they were trying to survive in the Andes. Um, the audio description does a really good job of having that reverence for the actors in the real life people that they're portraying, and not which is also what director Jay Bayona does really well. Is he tries to tell this story in the most honest way possible, so that this doesn't just become the cannibal movie. Um, there's a really well described plane crash sequence. It's pretty quick. It's not very long. It's like a minute, but it's really well done. Um, there's just sort of all the time that you spend with them, and how they sort of degrade over time. They lose weight, and because they don't have food, and then they have to make a terrible decision. Um, and everything is just handled really well. There are people who just kind of pass, and we sit there in that moment and kind of watch. And the audio description in every single moment in this film is aware of what it is that it's describing, making sure it describes it well. I thought the tone was set perfectly. It's just a really well crafted audio description track from top to bottom. So I'm very happy with it. And anyway, moving up the list, number
Roy
4,
Samuelson, Bo is
4 or
Afraid.
5, 4. I forget where I'm at now. Um,
Roy Samuelson, Bo is
Bo is
Afraid.
Afraid, which is just absolutely insanity. It's just absolute insanity. It's Ari Aster. His films, he does not hold back on visuals. This is the guy that did Hereditary and Midsummer, 2 horror films that are really graphic in certain time. Yeah, really, just they are. This one has a little bit more of a comedic angle to it, and is a little bit more bizarre and less in your face gory like the other 2 were. Not that it doesn't have its moments, but it's less of that. It's not 3 hours of just in your face, like, what is this? Um, but it has some really interesting things that it has to describe here. sort of an anthropomorphic penis, just a giant penis man. Um, yeah, so that's in here. Um, I don't know how you describe that otherwise, but thank you. But honestly, there are things like people just kind of run up to Joaquin Phoenix in this film, and he's scared of like everything. Life is really hard for him. I was like, why don't you move? Like his it just seems like everything he's afraid of everything, and he even when in the quieter scenes, like the second part of the film when he's with Nathan Lane at Nathan Lane's house, and they got that guy that like lives out back that's always like popping up at a window. I thought that was tracked really well. Every time his head pops up, you're like, oh yeah, oh, whoa, shit, okay, weirdo. You know, what I mean, he just he like peeks in through a window. It always leaves you unsettling, and I thought the audio description did a really good job of leaving us unsettled. So Bo was afraid. Moving up the list to number three or four at this point. I don't know. Sisu. Oh my god, I love Sisu. Thank you so much for describing Sisu. I rented this. I don't know if it's ever where it has audio description, if it's ever going to travel around. But oh my god, I love Sisu so much. Again, international film. It's a guy with a very particular set of skills killing Nazis, and it's amazing. And the action sequences are so over the top. There was a scene where he's underwater and he's trying to stay underwater, so he cuts a guy's throat and then breathes the air out of it. I don't even think that's like technically possible. I've never seen it done in film before, but good job. Like wow. I was like the description in this film is just so over the top. There's the whole scene where he gets into the plane and then towards the end. It's just everything is this is such an over the top film. Very well done. The action is insane. Nothing. This is one of the most fun. This is in my top 10 of the year. I left it up there. I don't care what people think. I had more fun in Sisu than I think I had in any other film this year. Um, let's be honest. We all love watching Nazis die, and thank you for the audio description track for this. This is if you watch Zone of Interest, make sure to watch Sisu right after. It'll be very cathartic for you. You'll be like, oh, it's Nazis. I didn't want to watch that film. Let's watch him now get killed by this by this guy. So yeah, it's Sisu is on my list. Moving up
Jeff Heck, no one will save you.
to No One Will Save You. Actually, I think this is number three, so I think that was number four. Anyway, um, this film is basically audio description. I didn't like this film. This is actually a great example of you can totally make this list without me liking you, but the audio description can be great. I didn't like the film at all. I thought the idea was dumb. I thought the fact that they could speak and just chose not to, the whole film was dumb. Silent Night does a much better job, which we'll talk about in a second. Spoiler alert. Of actually having like um, uh, keeping dialogue out and also making it make sense and just stylistically here she speaks like she sings along to some dialogue. There's some times where she speaks and some other people speak, but then like the film is like without dialogue the whole time, but annoyingly so. Like there are times where she should speak or someone should speak or someone should say something. The most annoying thing to me I think was when the delivery driver shows up and he's like playing basketball with her package, like pretending to play basketball and then like shoot hoops. I was like, this is well described, but obnoxious. Just like any normal human would have said something, like, hey, how's it going? I got a package for you. Like people don't just like my mailman has never like once like pantomimed anything with my packages or my mail. Usually they greet you like a normal person. Um, but yeah, it's an alien film. It takes place basically following Caitlin Deaver around for the whole film, and crap, there's a lot happening around her, and very well described. The description is the film. It's basically kind of like listening to an audiobook, but without the audio description, this film would not work at all because there's no dialogue in this film except like 10 to 15 words. You know what I'm saying? Like they do speak, and it's obnoxious that they do, because there's so little of it. But yeah, the audio description here, and then it's sci-fi. It's sci-fi. It's an alien. I mean, there's like people die and things are destroyed and aliens and things are happening that are weird. And there's this whole past with her character that, I mean, the writer of this worked overtime to make sure everything fit in this film. So kudos to No One Will Save You, a film I didn't like but has great audio description. Moving up the list.
Darren Polish and Deluxe.
So, Silent Night, the other film that doesn't have dialogue. I didn't want to. These films didn't win. This is my number two film of the year, because I didn't want to just say that the best audio description of the year was the most audio description. There was a film that I actually think that had a lot of audio description in it. That would be number one, but also has dialogue. Yeah, Silent Night has no dialogue in it at all, and it's the whole film is described, so you wouldn't be able to understand it at all. It would just be sound effects, but it is really well done. The description that was written, I mean, you have to pay attention to everything. I think what's really interesting about Silent Night and No One Will Save You is at a certain point when you come back around, it's like, especially with like No One Will Save You, that spends so much time in that house. It's like, how do you keep describing the same location that you've been in all this time? You know, I mean, at a certain point, I think you've described everything, so you just keep describing because you can't leave us in silence because the film is silent. So it's just like it's weird. But it challenges the narrators to find more and more levels of things and to bring us more and more into the film. So we get more and more description of things we wouldn't normally have time to describe, which is what makes these films so interesting to me, is because normally we're lucky. We're like, okay, we get a brief character description, maybe we know when they're in a room, we'll get a little bit of location. It just depends on the film. Sometimes there isn't a lot of time to jump in and get anything. I went into this debate about another film that's a 2024 film and how I felt like it didn't use its time appropriately, because there were clearly times where I would have interjected at least like facial expressions, reactions, something. But no, if it didn't have a lot of time to describe something, it didn't do little interjections. It didn't make the most of the time. Here, these films are challenged with, you have all the time in the world, make sure you use it. You know, I thought they really did. I thought these two films did a really good job, but I didn't want to give it to the most audio description. I honestly, Silent Night's maybe a slightly better film. It's directed by John Woo. Um, Neither of them are really great films, but there is one film that was actually really good and had really great audio description, and I loved it. And so my number one for best audio description of 2024 is John Wick Chapter 4. I thought this film had exceptional audio description. I had the benefit of seeing at least the first one. I think the second one. Um, I questioned whether or not I saw the second one. I'm like, did I see it? Did I not see it? What did I do with the second one? I can't remember. I think I've seen the first two. I did not see the third one visually, and I would say I didn't see the fourth one. So audio description on this made sense to me, knowing what I know about the world that they live in, and also the fact that they keep ramping up the action with every John Wick entry. There's a lot of combat here. There are a lot of scenes where people are really quiet because it's a really extended action sequence done really well. Donnie Yen plays a blind character that uses these little like sort of echolocation devices perfectly. These little alarms that let him know where somebody is. I thought that was done really well. The explanation of how he does it, and then just all of the bodies dropping, basically all the people who are in these fight scenes and how they do it, this gung fu as they call it, that fits in with John Wick, where the stunt work is just exceptional. And yeah, this is This is how you merge excellent audio description and maximize your potential while also having a film that is using dialogue. Um, so it's very easy to just default into the mode of sure, the ones that the ones that were given the whole film to just do nothing but description could be considered the best audio, but I like to think it's the marriage of both. Like you have to have some dialogue, um, and also excellent audio description. And I think John Wick does the best job of doing this. I caught this. I rented this. I think when it came on VOD from the Apple Store. I don't know where it is now. That was like way back in the day. It was months ago. So yeah, this has always been on top for me. So those are my favorite audio description tracks of the year. Let me know what yours are in the comments. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And we'll see what I have in 2024. I really want to be able to say names. I do, but I want to be able to say them for all of them. I don't want to just have some names. So, anyway, yeah. I will see you guys on the other side.